Today, let's talk about ingredient quality. When I think of ingredient quality, there are three things that I look for. The first is how they look as a product. The second is scent. And the third is feel. Let me explain. So the first is how it looks. Does it look like it should? For example, dried red dates should be a vibrant maroon red. It looks like a dried red date. Whereas dried Chinese yam should look like dried Chinese yam, shriveled and curled like this when dried. In general, for naturally dried herbs, you want it to be pretty close to the color of its original state. The darker it is, the more discolored, the longer it's been drying and potentially losing its active ingredients. Except for dried tangerines, the darker it is, the better it is. So there are exceptions. There are certain ways that the herbs are processed. For example, with sulfur, stir-baked, fried, charcoaled, sun-dried, air-dried, oven-dried, it all varies. And so really understanding what it should look like as a result of its processing is also important. One of these is the puffed or baked Job's tears, which can be found in both its dried state and its puffy state. And each ingredient has its own unique properties and actions. The second is smell. It shouldn't smell rancid, sour, or off-putting. For example, red date should smell like red dates, and flowers such as chrysanthemums, red roses, honeysuckles should also have a little bit of a sweeter, fragrant smell such as flowers. Light, floral, a little bit airy. And here it's in smell that I do want to call out sulfur. Sulfur or sulphites is a very commonly used ingredient to process and preserve herbs. But it does smell slightly sour, and this is a big giveaway about how heavily processed an ingredient is with sulfur depending on the smell. And feel. So these two are exact same dried red dates, both with seeds and dried. However, this one is a little more pliable and moist, so it does have a little more water content, whereas this one is more dried. In this case, they're both perfectly usable for soups or teas. However, this one, if you want to remove the seed, is definitely easier because you can cut through it, whereas this one's definitely a lot harder. I'd say red dates are probably one of the easier ones that aren't as heavily processed and in general are pretty easy to identify as decent quality so long as it's still fragrant and not overly dark. All right, so let's bring all this together with 4 samples of dried Chinese yam that I've managed to source. These two are definitely more white. They feel more powdery, so I can feel the sulfur residue, and look how straight they are, right? And so the idea is that they put sulfur on it and keep it flat and straight, whereas these ones are a little more naturally dried with a little bit of that beige. And so if I'm going to rank these in terms of quality level, I would definitely put this one as last, being smaller. Definitely has that powdery feel and very white, along with this one, which is a little bit bigger. And these two would definitely be my go-to choices for soups in dried Chinese yam as a product. The reason is because I really don't feel the same amount of grittiness and powder on these products versus the other ones. And their color and the shape really does tell me that it is a little more naturally dried. And you can definitely see the more grains on this one versus this one. All right, questions. So what do you do if you end up buying not so great quality herbs? There are 2 things that you can do. The first is you can soak them in water for about 30 minutes before usage, scrub them and rinse and throw out that water. The second is that you can blanch them as part of your meat blanching. So drop it in cold water, bring that to a boil, throw that water out, and then add to your soup. Question, do I clean my herbs? Well, that depends. If I'm buying this quality and I see and I recognize it and I can sense and feel that sulfur, even smell it, this I will definitely soak and clean. However, a product of this quality, I might not clean. I would just drop it into my soup as is or into my frozen soup packs. There are some ingredients that do need cleaning and prepping, such as snow fungus to cut out the middle and expand. Dried shiitake mushrooms also potentially to cut out the stems. Very personal choice on you as a chef. Question, does product origin affect quality? My answer is that it's probably processing that affects quality more than the origin. Question, to organic or not? I personally do not use this as a purchasing criteria for my ingredients. For me, it's sometimes pretty hard to determine from plant to on counter and usage, the whole supply chain and processing steps. It can go from farmer to supplier to cleaner to producer to packager to shipper, and all those steps in between are sometimes hard to verify unless you've got an end-to-end validation process. And a lot of TCM herbs and ingredients are grown, produced, processed, and shipped from China. And so that's pretty far away for me to actually consider any of that. From experience, after 20 plus years of using these ingredients, both in Canada and Hong Kong, I haven't had much concern for quality because I do try to buy from reputation or referrals. There are some ingredients though that I'm very careful on. For example, fish maw, fish stomach, dried ginseng, dried scallops, and some of the more expensive ingredients to be sure that I am buying from a reputable source and that I can check the quality of the products before I buy. Part of my business model is really around education. It's allowing people to understand the basis of what's out there and for you to go and experience, explore, test these products out yourself. Like really buy these ones and say, all right, how does this work for me? How does this work for me? And learn from your experience, because that's really where the growth is, when you learn and experience it for yourself. And it's okay if you get a subpar product or you're not sure. A tip for storing and using ingredients is first in and first out. So I will finish all of these red dates before I replenish with a new pack. Happy exploring ingredients, and I'll see you next time.